Hi guys, it's indeed our pleasure to have Michael Bolton with us. I'm sure everyone around in our testing world, if they ever list down the stalwarts in testing, I'm sure it will probably begin with Michael. Do you agree, guys? I'm sure you are. And just to let you know a little bit more, Michael Bolton is a consulting software tester and a testing teacher who helps people to solve testing problems that they didn't realize they could solve. I have been following him on Twitter, and I just told him that if we just consolidate all his posts, I think they are learning in itself. So he's very active on Twitter. And those of you who probably don't know, since 2006, he is a co-author and a proposer of something which is really immensely popular. And I think the most important thing to have happened in testing, which is rapid software testing and or RST. He has basically trained and taught people on this methodology. And as per him, which we agree, probably he has visited around 35 countries across 6 continents and flown a million miles. So Michael definitely is an inspiration for the entire testing community, and we are really indebted for his presence as our keynote speaker. Michael, where are you located right now? Currently, are you traveling for some sessions, or you are in US right now, or Canada?
No, I'm in Toronto,
Toronto. Okay,
uh,
very nice.
which is in Canada. We're sometimes it's easy to view the United States, if you look at a map, as the crazy uncle in our basement. Um, I haven't been on an airplane since the 13th of March, 2020. I haven't been outside the country since then. I have been to a handful of provinces in Canada, but we've been, for reasons that should be fairly straightforward, reluctant to travel too much over the last little while.
So,
Partly because of a failure for people to take science seriously.
yeah, true. So currently, like if for last 18 months odd, how has been your experience without traveling? And do you think this is a healthy thing to go on, or you are itching to basically go out, travel and meet people and then train them in person?
Well, a little of both. I mean, I think the excitement that everybody is expressing around working from home um, is troublesome in some respects. It is so important for us as human beings to be in each other's presence. That's when the really effective work happens. Serendipity is also a really important factor. Bumping into people, casual conversations. A lot of discoveries happen in these unscheduled kinds of circumstances. And if we think about how the history of technology has come about, the history of human invention and human ideas, a lot of it comes with personal contact, with accident, with people chatting in not just in offices, but also in restaurants and in pubs and in cafes and in parks and on walks. And we miss that working from home. At the same time, I find it a lot harder to reach an audience in India, for example.
Yeah.
If I have to actually go there, getting to India from Toronto is something on the order of a 24-hour enterprise at the best of times. And partly because of that, I haven't been to India since 2009, and I want to go back.
We would love to have you back here.
Well, the first thing you notice when as a Westerner, the first thing you notice when you land in India is everything's heightened.
Yeah.
Everything is Well, I've described it before. It's a full adult dose for the senses. The door to the plane opens, and the smell is different, and the smells are changing all the time. The sensorium in India is so rich, the sights and the sounds and the smells and the tastes. So I miss that enormously. But on the other hand, you and I can talk like this, so there's that.
Absolutely, and we are able to get you as our keynote speaker. That is probably the biggest plus for us. Last year we had, this year again we are having you, and I think thanks to the situation that we can have somebody of stature of Micheal Bolton among us, the community can experience you, community can actually hear you out. Amazing stuff, Micheal. So we are really indebted, and I would ask you to talk about your keynote topic, which is demonstration, experiment, and testing. If you can just give a very brief intro to the audience, so they would be even more
very
excited.
Brief. That's a tall order. Anyway,
we don't want you to basically spill all the beans, so that's the reason I said, yeah, just be enough there. Yeah.
You know, when I first started in testing back in the first time I ever had an assignment specifically labeled tester was in 1994, and I was working for a company called Quarterdeck. It was a commercial software company, and our job as testers was to find problems in the product. And some people would, even then, would have been astonished. We didn't have test scripts. We did not have formalized procedures. Our job was to interact with the product, and our product had to be compatible with lots of other products. So a lot of what we did was operating products not ours on systems where our product was installed. It was memory management and multitasking software, and so the programs that ran under our multitasking system, they had to work properly under the multitasking system just as they did under regular straightforward DOS. Scripting all that would have been expensive and highly limiting.
Yeah.
Because the time and effort that one would spend scripting stuff would swamp our capacity to actually interact with it. The only good thing you'd get out of that is, how do you make a script? You explore and interact with the product.
Yep.
When you're doing that. And in so doing, you're experimenting with it. But if you notice, scientists, when they perform experiments, they design a protocol, but the steps that they follow are rarely prescribed in advance when the purpose is discovery. When the purpose is replication, that's a different deal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was looking the other day at Ken Kainer's Foundations book for black box software testing, which I hadn't looked at for a few years. And there it is right there. This is not a particularly new book, that a demonstration is not an experiment. But that's not exactly a new idea, because Thomas Hobbes pointed out when Robert Boyle said, here's how we do an experiment. We perform an experiment, we lay it out, and then we repeat it for other people. One of the things that Hobbes is on about it is that the repetition is not the important part. The discovery is the important part. And Boyle was eventually compelled to adjust his description of what science is all about. They didn't call it science back then. They called it experimental philosophy. How about that? I worry that, unlike my early experience in testing, that I would have to say the majority of people who perform testing these days are doing so in a way that the script ties them to the work.
Yeah.
that their process is being mediated by this thing that gets in between them and the naturalistic experience of the product. And therefore, well, of course, that's slow and expensive too, people say. So what should we do about that? Oh, I know what we should do. We should automate it. We should take that scripted set of steps, that formalized procedure, and we should turn it into a program for a machine to reproduce. Well, that's enormously expensive and fiddly, especially when that technology is pointed at a human user interface. When it's pointed at a machine-friendly interface, okay, there's lots of really great work that we can do that way. But we've got to be careful about it, because even if in the domain, let's say, of API testing, there's this thing called contract testing, which I think is actually a pretty cool idea, wherein the producer of an API and the consumer of an API provide a set of inputs that is specified to produce a certain set of outputs.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, that's great. It's a fine thing to do, to check your work that way.
Yeah.
But, and it's a big but, that doesn't answer the question of, does this API solve the problem for this consumer?
Yes.
It encodes a certain part of that transaction. But for example, it doesn't identify whether the API is well documented. It doesn't identify whether the API is reliable in varying kinds of conditions on different platforms. Yeah. Those are things that can be determined by experiment. So the contract test, I would prefer to call it contract checks, but nobody listens to me. That's a demonstration. And demonstration's fine. Corroboration of things that we think we know is all right. But it seems to me the real juice in testing, the really meaty part of it, apologies to vegetarians.
No, we really, that word.
The powerful parts of testing, the capacity to reveal problems that are going to matter to businesses and going to matter to consumers and to people and to societies, those come from experiment. They don't come from simple demonstrations.
Great. So Michael, experiment is also, as you said, is some steps that you can follow, right? Or no, it is something which you, then wouldn't it be an experiment? See, what is an experiment? The definition of experiment is what?
Well, let's look at the purposes, and then we can maybe look at something more definitional. The purpose of a demonstration is to show what we know. The purpose of an experiment in science is to challenge what we know. To some degree, we're corroborating a theory when we perform an experiment, but mostly the power of science is in trying to falsify the theory. In a demonstration, when we repeat stuff, our goal is to show certain kinds of desirable consistencies. With an experiment, our goal is to reveal interesting inconsistencies. The idea behind a demonstration is a smooth performance.
Yeah.
In experiment, we have a certain amount of tolerance for a specific kind of tolerance for bumpy, rocky experiences, because we want to reveal something new.
Yeah.
In a demonstration, variation is kind of suppressed. You don't want to do it too differently, because that might disturb your model, your idea of what's there. But in an experiment, you want to find out problems with your model of what's there. So variability in experiment is downplayed. In a demonstration, variability in a demonstration is downplayed. Variability in experiment is okay. Now, of course, you got to keep track of those things, and that puts a different kind of burden on the tester. The tester has to be good at keeping good notes. Tester has to be good at recording observations, and then recording tools can help with that. But the tester has to be alert to the possibility of surprises and the possibility of insights. And I think scripted testing, whether the script is performed by a human agent or by a mechanical agent, suppresses that
Absolutely, yes.
idea of discovery. It focuses us on the normal and not the surprises. And that's what we want to find out about.
Right. And I'm going to stop asking more questions on this topic because I want to hold on to my horses, and maybe there are people who have already got interested in this wonderful topic. Let's wait for Micheal's session, guys, in the global testing retreat. It's going to happen on 11th and 12th, and Micheal's session is on 11th of December. It's a Saturday. We'll be putting the schedule up shortly. But can I digress a little bit, Micheal, and ask you something which is not related to your keynote session? Because I want to keep it under wraps, and I want to make sure that people get interested enough for you to ask more questions in the session. Is that okay? Can I ask
Do you mean not
question?
following the scripted procedure and going off in some other tangent?
Yes.
Hey, bring it.
Yeah, all right.
Let's do that.
So, Micheal, I've been following your recent tweets, one on codeless automation. So, what is your thought on that? I know I have read it, but I just want to hear from you.
It's not codeless. There's code.
Yeah, absolutely.
The code is obscured.
Yeah.
To the people who are interacting with the product sometimes. Sometimes it's revealed and revealable, but the whole idea behind codeless tooling like that, so-called codeless tooling, is to suppress talk about code, because code is scary and code requires skill and all that sort of stuff. And my thought on that is, hey, high-level stuff is great. I don't want to. Here's a really good example. In the very early days of personal computers, word processors would allow you to make text bold on your little dot matrix printer. Yeah. But in order to do that, you had to remember what the control codes were for your printer, and you had to type that in. Well, and now it's codeless in the sense that we mark some text and we press a little button and that turns it to bold. That kind of codelessness is kind of okay. Yeah. Well, let's remember there's code underneath it that's handling that.
Yes.
What I would prefer that people would think about when we talk about codeless automation, that's touted as something that's sometimes designed to make it possible for unskilled testers to do certain kinds of things. But really, that would be all right if it didn't also suppress the capacity of testers to vary actions, to vary data, to perturb the program in really interesting kinds of ways. And the trouble with these kinds of things is if you want to take the banana, or if you want the banana, you have to take the whole gorilla. Somebody once said. So at the same time as codeless tools dampen the need for testers to learn how to code, that can be okay. They also dampen the sophistication and the elaboration of the test.
Very true.
And they turn it into a demonstration once again. And there, like I said, there's some value in demonstration, but our real job as testers is to find problems and not to enact a smooth performance. That's one aspect of codeless, so-called codeless tools that I find I think diverts us from our real mission.
Absolutely right, Micheal. So great. Thank you so much for sharing that thought. We are thinking about putting a panel discussion around this topic, that codeless automation, is it a fad? Okay, so maybe
it's a what?
It's a fashion. It's just the word itself is interesting enough for selling these tools, these things, and maybe it's nothing more than that. So this is where
it's a marketing thing. Yeah,
it's a marketing.
I would I would concur. And boy, I think it's so important for testers to speak out
Yeah.
against any form of marketing that disempowers
Yeah.
testing and that disempowers testers. And
Absolutely.
I think as a community, we're unjustifiably leery of that. I think we've got to speak out for skilled testing.
Yes.
I've got nothing against tools. I'm enthusiastic about tools.
Yeah.
I like writing code.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there's there's aspects of that which we got to be careful of, because writing code can be so much fun.
Yes.
You solve a problem.
Yeah.
And you refine it until it becomes really smooth and elegant and so on and so forth. But that takes some time. And then you think I'll say me, not you, but I start to think, well, how can I make this program a little bit more elegant? How can I make it do something else that's interesting? At the same time as I'm doing something that's interesting, I may be diverting myself from the idea of moving on to the next problem in the product that matters.
Yeah.
So it's really easy for coding is so seductive. It's fun.
Yes.
But it can seduce us into solving problems with our code rather than solving the problem of finding bugs in the product that we're supposed to be testing. I get sucked into that so much that I think it's really easy to do that.
Yeah. Great. So look, guys, it is something that we are looking forward to, all these interactions. Maybe one last question, if you have time, maybe one last one, Michael, if I can.
I got all the time in the world.
Great, thank you so much. So, like all these tools which claim that they are AI-driven testing tools, again, I'm moving towards something which is your recent tweets, and I was basically looking at them. I want to hear your thoughts on them. AI-driven testing tools. What is your thought?
AI-driven?
Yeah, artificial.
Well, show me what it's driving, and show me the AI.
Yeah.
I mean, let's look at what this is. I think AI, certainly with respect to testing tools, is absolutely being used as a marketing term.
Yeah.
And a marketing term to refer to apparently intelligent software.
Yeah.
Apparently intelligent. That's what AI stands for. But I do not see anything in the so-called AI driven testing tools that I've looked at that is in fact AI at all. Is machine learning being used here? Well, I don't see any evidence of it. I see some sophisticated algorithms.
Yeah.
And I see some attempts. Attempted intelligence is another one, AI. I see some attempts to make otherwise rigid processes a little more flexible in terms of heuristics that say, okay, so if that doesn't work, let's try this. And a trivial kind of example is, if this XPath-based approach to finding an element in the DOM doesn't work, let's try a CSS-based approach to finding this element in the DOM. But you can do that with perfectly ordinary, regular procedural programming, functional programming, ordinary stuff that doesn't involve a jot of AI.
Yeah.
Shazam, the product that finds songs on the web, right? I don't know if that uses AI or not. I suspect what it in fact uses is very sophisticated algorithms and hashing to find patterns. Now, it's easy for a civilian to look at that and say, wow, that thing's brilliant. It's intelligent. But it's not that intelligent. It's just really sophisticated software.
Yes.
Now, there's another set of questions that one wants to ask about so-called AI-driven stuff. If it's machine learning, what's the training set?
Yeah.
Where does it come from? Does it come
Yeah.
from other people's products, or does it come from our products?
Yeah.
What is the validation set that's being used on it?
Yeah.
And is the training set that's being used relevant to our circumstance? Because one thing, if you look into AI, you find out really quickly that it's quite startlingly and surprisingly inflexible. A model that works really great for playing Go, and it supposedly trains itself.
Yeah.
Is really inflexible as soon as you change one element of the game, the whole system has to be retrained again.
Yes.
I mean, the whole thing has to be retrained. So tell me about your AI. Tell me, first of all, is it a classification system? Is it a prediction system? Is it a recommendation system? Tell me about the means of training that's being used on it. Is it supervised learning? Is it unsupervised learning? Is it reinforcement learning? All the vendors who talk about AI, they don't talk about any of that stuff. And the reason they don't, I suspect, is because there's no AI in terms of what AI researchers would talk about.
Yep.
They're not doing that. They're using sophisticated algorithms. So, now, if you do have actual AI involved, then you've got another problem. And that is that, as my colleague James Bach puts it really nicely, testing with AI is like testing with a child.
Because
you cannot trust the child to make a competent adult social judgment about what's good or bad or right or wrong. What the child can do sometimes is to provoke interesting questions. The child can even ask interesting questions. AI doesn't ask questions, but it does present us with circumstances sometimes that prompt us to ask our own questions, and that can be pretty cool. But you can't trust it as episode after episode after episode shows. And you got to be really careful when you let any old person train the AI in an unsupervised way. Microsoft Tay, T-A-Y. I urge people to look that up and see what happened with it. We're seeing exactly the same thing happening just this week with this new Delphi AI thing, which is supposedly some kind of Delphic oracle that tells you whether something is right or wrong. Well, AI has zero social competence.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
And therefore, it can't be trusted to make social judgments, which the decision, is this a bug or is this not a bug, rests on.
Absolutely, yes. You have nailed it, Michael. So good. So guys, I took only 5 to 10 minute permission, and we are around 25 minutes odd into this conversation. Thank you so much, Michael. I don't want to extend it further. I want you to attend his keynote session, and we'll keep extra 10 minutes for you guys to ask questions, anything related to the topic. And Michael definitely would answer any other question not related to the topic as well. So we are looking forward for your keynote session as well there, Michael. Looking forward for your session. Thank you so much for your time today.